Hi, I'm Mindy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my March wrap-up. I finished 7 books in March. The first book that I finished was The Dead Zone by Stephen King. And The Dead Zone is about Johnny, who has a special power. You could say he has the Shining. He can see into the future. And this book follows Johnny's whole life and him helping people when he sees their future and things they need to do. And there's also the very first chapter introduces the antagonist. So very first chapter you get this horrible man, and I was left thinking, please don't let the whole book be about this guy because he's awful. So if the whole book was about the antagonist, I wouldn't have made it all the way through the book. But luckily, most of it is about Johnny, and he is awesome. And I ended up giving The Dead Zone 4 stars. The next book I finished was an audiobook of Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica, which is a book from Argentina, and it's about a virus that is in all animals, and people are not able to eat animals anymore, so they start to eat people. And they raise people just like they used to raise animals to eat. This book was really dark and really bleak all the way through, and it goes into detail about how meat is processed, and it shows the moral difficulties surrounding raising people to eat. This book was not easy to read at times, but it was very good, and I gave it 4 stars. Next, I finished The Merciless by Danielle Vega. I tried to take off a sticker, and look what happened. Oh well. But this is a YA horror novel that follows a new girl as she meets this group of what I would call mean girls and joins their group. This group of girls thinks that another girl in their school is possessed, and they plan to do an exorcism on her. Very YA with very unlikable characters, which made it hard. The main character was likable, so that's what got me through. But very quickly, I came to see that this was not going to be the average YA book, as some of the more sinister things started to happen. This one really caught my interest pretty quickly, and then it just kept ramping up and ramping up and ramping up and just getting more and more interesting. This book was exciting, creepy, and I really enjoyed it and gave it 4 stars. Yes. I have been liking my books. Next, I finished an e-arc of Your Turn to Suffer by Tim Wagner that I got from NetGalley, and I have a full review of this book. The general synopsis of this book is that a woman is being pursued by a cult that says that she needs to repent, atone, or suffer. The suffering is great in this book, as in there's a lot of it. It's very over the top. This is a gore-filled book. It's also very confusing to start off with. Things are happening that don't make sense, but you have to give it a little time, and then things are kind of explained. And I know at that point I started to enjoy the book a lot more. This one is for horror readers that like their gore and a little bit of weirdness in their books. Next, I finished Scratches by Joshua Marcella, which is a haunted house novella, which is my favorite thing, haunted houses. And this one follows a boy who does not have an easy childhood. His mother is an alcoholic. He moves his bedroom into the basement, and a lot of creepy, horrifying things happen when he's in this basement. This really is a very scary basement. As a haunted house story, it is really, really creepy and wonderful. It does get very dark. There are some dark subject matters discussed, but I really loved Scratches, and I gave that one 4 stars as well. The next book that I finished was Universal Harvester by John Darnell. Awesome cover, awesome premise, which is that a man working in a video rental place realizes that there are some really strange, kind of sinister clips that are spliced into the middle of some of their tapes. And he and the owner of the shop try to figure out the mystery of what these weird clips are on the tapes. That is a great premise. You could make a fantastic book about that premise. It's a mystery, and it sounds like a unique one, and one that I would love to read. And I think a lot of people would think so too, except that's not really what this ended up being. I mean, it is a mystery, probably a literary mystery, and the first 50 pages were fantastic. I have no complaints about the first 50 pages, which were about what the premise suggests. These people discovering the clips on the tapes and trying to track down where they came from. However, at that point, the characters are not really in the book ever again for the last 150 pages. Their part's done, I guess. And that's horrible. I wish that the whole book would have been them being these unlikely detectives trying to figure out this mystery. That would have been great. But instead, it goes on this 80-page, seemingly unrelated tangent about somebody's backstory. And it is incredibly dull. Just so boring. So boring. And I couldn't figure out what it had to do with anything, and I was really upset. The last 5 pages of the 80 pages were kind of interesting, but it was like, why? Why 80 pages of complete boring nonsense that takes away from what I was already interested in? And then we meet some other people, and it seemingly just, this book was all over the place. I will say that everything did end up relating to each other and relating to the mystery, so I guess it's a book with a story, but it was not well executed at all, and it was so boring and wasted a lot of my time. Anyways, for those first 50 pages, and for the fact that I was able to figure out how everything kind of related to the story, so it wasn't just utter nonsense. I gave it 2 stars. The next book I finished at the end of the month is The Way of Kings, which is the Stormlight Archive series number 1, and this is by Brandon Sanderson, and I finished this whole thing in a month. I've never read this much from one book in a month. I cannot believe it. I did it. Yay. I completed March of the Mammoths in March. Never done that before. So that's exciting. And this book is also amazing and my favorite read of the month. It is definitely 5 stars. And I cannot wait to read the rest of the series. This book follows many points of view, but the main 3 would be Kaladin, who was my favorite character and has the best story arc throughout this book. There's also Shallan, and there's Dalinar and his sons. The characters were well fleshed out. The world building is also excellent in this book. There's this land that has really huge, devastating storms, but the storms are also the source of magic because there are these stones, and if you leave them out in a storm, they gather up the energy of the storm inside of the stones, and they glow, and they will put those stones into weapons and armor, and it gives people extra strength, and they're the source of all the magic in this world. And they're also the currency, these stones. So that is like the most valuable thing in this world. This book is full of really amazing creatures, animals, landscape, the plants, everything is just unique and interesting in the series. I cannot wait to read more. And the last book that I finished in March is The Loop by Jeremy Robert Johnson, about a very evil company doing experiments that go terribly wrong and end up affecting a group of teenagers. I think this is a YA book, but it is really a lot of swearing, a lot of things that maybe wouldn't be in a typical YA book. Very adult seeming. Except for, yeah, they do act like really stupid teenagers. And that's kind of the problem that I had with the beginning of the book. And they were really annoying. Really annoying. So much so that I was thinking about DNFing the book. I decided to start it over. And on second try, yeah. Still really annoying. Still did not like them. But I pushed through, and at a certain point, things get very exciting. The thread that held it all together, where I didn't DNF, is the main character is not as annoying. She's kind of a good character. I liked her. But all of her friends and people around her were doing awful, awful things. And this is before they were affected by these experiments gone wrong. They were just awful. But at a certain point, things get very exciting. They get very intense. There are some very creepy scenes, including one that was especially creepy that will really get to you if you don't like small spaces. Yeah. Claustrophobic, anyone? There's a whole lot of action, and it's really well done action. I really enjoyed those parts, and that's pretty much the last half of the book. 3/4 of the book was just a wild, fast ride and a lot of fun. I ended up really liking it. in the end. Those are the 7 books that I finished in March. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? If you like this video, you can hit like and subscribe. And I'll be back every Tuesday, Thursday, sometimes Sunday with another book-related video. Thanks.